So welcome, Tim, to the Impact Club show. Tim Hughes is a social selling evangelist, who I'll talk about in a minute. Just to let you know, guys, the Impact Club show is a show all about working with and talking to impact makers, change makers, and thought leaders around the world that want to make and are making an impact on the world. You know, there's many people I meet in different fields who are doing great things and fantastic things, but the difference is when they make an impact. And when you start making an impact, it makes a ripple effect. And the purpose of this show is to connect the impact makers in the world and see how we can connect with each other. Different industries. There's so much knowledge you can get from different industries. Like a medical person listening to an engineer, to a social evangelist in business listening to and someone from education. So the purpose of the show is to bring impact makers together, and I'm really delighted to welcome Mr. Tim Hughes here today. How are you?
Call me Tim.
Tim, perfect. Tim.
My mother calls me Timothy.
Right. Okay. So Tim. That's why I put a little Tim there on the caption. My voice goes high and low. Okay, David. I'll see whether I can get another one of these. Penny, have you got one of these? Sort of. Earphones. Have you got one of those? I'll use those. Have you got one of yours? I see. Okay, great. So, Tim, just for those people who don't know you, do you want to give a little introduction of yourself? We met maybe 4 or 5 years ago now, wasn't it?
Yes.
At a social media conference, and got to know you then. So, just a little bit about your background and what you're doing now.
I'm the author of this book, which is Social Selling: Techniques to Influence Buyers and Changemakers, which is available on all Amazon platforms. I've just started a company with Adam Gray, who's AG Social Media. So we're Digital Leadership Associates. We're at digitalleadershipassociates.com. And what we do is social. So I was involved in a sales transformation at Oracle. I've just come out of 10 years at Oracle. And 3 years of that was a sales transformation where we took the sales team who were used to doing one on-premise deal every year for about $2 million, which came in pretty much through the letterbox, and we transformed them into people that would actually go and actively prospect for customers in a SaaS cloud world, and they're generally doing 5 deals at 250K. And as part of that transformation, there was a whole number of things that we did, and one of those things was social selling. I've been in social now for the last just coming up for 8 years when I joined Twitter, and I was looking for something to start blogging about. So I actually started blogging just coming up to the 2-year anniversary, and a year ago I got a book deal. So 12 months ago, at the end of January 2016, I submitted my manuscript for my book, Social Selling.
Fantastic, right?
So I have 172,000 followers on Twitter, something like that.
Okay, great. So one thing I really wanted to focus on initially at the start of this conversation is what is social selling and your definition. So I'll give you some context around that. There's a lot of people on social media, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. There's a lot of activity on there. There's a lot of people who do business of some sort. However, what I also find is there's a lot of noise around what you should or shouldn't be doing in terms of the process. What I'm really interested in is for you to give us an insight of what really is social selling and the sort of the mechanisms that you've used organically to grow your spaces in social over the last couple of years.
So what is social selling? So there's a whole amount of dysfunction that is going on in the buying process, which means that when I started selling 25 years ago, anybody who went out to actually buy something would need to get 80% of the information from me as a salesperson. Now they're actually able to actually go online and educate themselves, and they're able to. You can actually cut out a salesperson. Generally, you need to have, the CEB reckon you need to get something like 20% of the information from a salesperson. So people are going online and educating themselves, and if you look at the CEB figures, they are now 57% of the way through the buying process before they need to talk to a salesperson, if they need to talk to a salesperson at all. I mean, most of us, if we were buying a new headset or something like that, we'd probably just go to Google or Amazon or whatever and just buy a new headset. We don't need to go. In the old days, we would have needed to go to couriers and buy it. But we just don't need to do that anymore. So so what's happening is that the salesperson in the process is becoming less and less important. So what what we're saying by using social is that we're actually able to build relationships with people online, which is where most people are, and go through a process of building up trust with them to the point where they kind of know that you're probably trying to sell something, and they buy it.
Mm-hmm.
So I wrote a blog nearly 2 years ago called, which is from a friend of mine who's getting 10 C-level meetings a week by using Twitter. And in that blog, I go through the process of actually how the person is doing that. And really, that's just a way of connecting with people, senior buyers, C-level people on social, building a relationship with them, sharing content with them. I don't necessarily like the term adding value, but it's a way of saying, I'm able to help you. And if you do the research with the person then you are able to support and help that person. And ultimately, what you're able to do, hopefully, is actually cut the buying process and actually close the person before the competition.
You mentioned that you wrote a blog a couple of years ago. There's a couple of phrases you mentioned. C-suite. For those who are not sure what C-suite means.
Oh yeah. So the C-suite is the CEO, the CFO, the CIO. So that's the chief executive officer, the chief finance officer, the chief information officer. So all of the people who sit on the board of directors, as we would generally say in the UK, in the US, they generally have a C at the beginning of their job title, and then
okay,
they would be
good. So, what I want to clarify, you mentioned that you wrote a blog a couple of years ago, which focused on how they can use social to sell more. Can you give us a couple of pointers that you mentioned within that blog that allow them to get an insight into how to use social more effectively?
Yeah. So in the blog, a friend of mine, Paul, he worked out who his target customers were. He did research online, on LinkedIn, in terms of who the organizations are, and the people within those organizations he needs to target to actually make that sale. He found out that this particular person was involved in an IT rollout that was in post offices. So what he did was he lives near me, he went into Kingston Post Office, saw that this particular rollout was in the post office, took a picture of it with his iPhone, and tweeted and tagged the person, said, you just rolled out this piece of IT equipment, you must be really proud. And of course, flattery gets you everywhere.
Yeah, it does.
And the person came back and said, yeah, we are really proud. Now, Paul had actually done some research and knew that he had a presentation that this person would probably be interested in. So he said, look, I'm not trying to sell you anything, but I've actually got a presentation that you might be interested in. And the guy said, well, okay. And he then actually followed me. At that time, you could only do direct message DM conversations on Twitter with people that you followed.
Yeah.
And then they had a DM conversation where Paul shared him this particular presentation. He said, I think you might be interested in it. The guy said, yeah, I really am. And in a traditional sales mode, Paul doesn't actually know all the detail. He actually brings somebody else in to actually help with the sales process. So they're having a conversation. And at the end of it, Paul said, well, can I have a meeting with you? And therefore, Paul got a meeting. And generally, what he sells, he closes on the first meeting. So, it's a way of actually saying, look, connecting, finding and researching the person, understanding what their needs are, not just turning up and like I get all the time where someone says, do I want any CEO, search engine optimization services? I don't deal with that. And actually finding something, adding value and making that connection and then asking for a meeting.
Okay. So can this methodology work in any industry?
Oh, I've not seen an industry where it doesn't work. So I've used this right across the board. I've used it we've used it in public sector. We've used it in construction, all verticals that I'm aware of. As long as the people are on social, and in pretty much most cases people are now, then you can actually build a relationship with them and connect with them.
And is there from your experience, what's the sort of time scale it takes to the point whereby using social to build trust, where there is a natural consequence of presenting the next solution, the next logical step? Is there a sort of a timeline to that, or is it different for different industries and people?
Well, I've seen it done like that, but generally what we would be saying to people is that you should be looking at probably a 3-month or a 6-month cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm working with a customer at the moment where we're building relationships with them. We're actually building we're actually looking at the influencers, looking at the people who are connected, one connection or 2 connections away on LinkedIn, and then building up relationships, or just asking for meetings. I know this person, or we both know this person through somebody else. Therefore, there must be an element of trust. Why wouldn't you connect us?
Mm-hmm.
As long as you're adding value and you're not being spammy or weird or whatever,
mm-hmm.
then there's no reason why you shouldn't connect.
Mm-hmm.
I have seen it where a friend of mine sells a procurement system, which she admits is pretty dull and boring. But she went to the CEO of Gourmet Burger on social and basically said, "Look, I'm selling procurement systems. Do you want to buy one?"
Right. Okay.
And he said, "Well, he said that actually, as a company, they don't generally buy from startups."
Okay.
And then so she said, "Well, I'll talk to you in 18 months."
Okay.
I said, "Yeah, fine." And that was like, quick. I'm just going to go to the person, have a conversation. And most people, if they're on social, are approachable. If you've been in social long enough, you know that you're the person you think to try.
Okay.
Because if a person is weird or spammy, you can just block them.
Yeah, I get that. So from your point of view, you mentioned a couple of times you're on social. So what's your definition of being on social in the context of what you're talking about? Is that just having a Twitter profile, a Facebook profile? Is that it, or is there more to it?
Well, the people generally will be drawn to different platforms, and there's nothing wrong with, you may find somebody they may be on Instagram posting pictures of their Labrador dogs, but they're not necessarily on LinkedIn or Twitter. And this is one of the things that we try to get over to people, is the fact that LinkedIn isn't social selling. LinkedIn is only 30% of the social graph. If you want to be social selling is a change of behavior. Mm-hmm. It's a different way of working, and it's not a tool or a particular platform. And therefore, if you want to target somebody and say, right, well, so I'm sitting by a John Lewis sofa. So if I want to target the chief financial officer of John Lewis, what I will do is I will go and look for the CFO of John Lewis on those different platforms and see what I can find out about that person, and then start connecting with them and maybe building a relationship with them. You're sitting in a room now with lots of pictures. In the past, what would happen is that you'd go into somebody's office and you'd say, "Oh, there's some interesting pictures of your children. You've obviously got 2 girls at school." And have a conversation about them.
Yeah, I'm not in my own house, but that's a different that's a different question. That's good, yeah.
But when I first started selling, 25 years ago, that there wasn't the internet, and I'd say to sales guys, "So what do you do?" He said, "Well, you build rapport." And so what happens is that what you're doing is that you're actually picking up what we did in the analog days and putting that on social. Mm-hmm. And what that allows me to do is I can actually do it faster and cheaper.
Mm-hmm. We've got one,
and I can scale more than what I was doing when I started selling 25 years ago.
Yeah, no, I get that. One question which I just got coming on the comments is relevant to what you said. Laura Dunstan's asked, I'd be interested to know what counts as spammy and weird, and when does that relationship tip over to there. So when it gets to a point whereby I think that it's spammy and weird, and as opposed to you build a relationship and you give them value, or you're trying to start a conversation, is there a point?
Well, there's a great quote on the film Spinal Tap, that there's a thin line between being clever and stupid.
Yeah. And
if you think selling is a profession that you should have a pride in. Selling is not about manipulation. If you're manipulating somebody, you're doing the wrong thing. So if you honestly believe that you've got something that can fundamentally change or help an organization, and you've done the research, and you think that is the right person to deal with that, then there's no problem in actually approaching them. Now, but there's also a difference between selling and pitching.
Okay.
I mean, we've all been in that situation where we get this LinkedIn request and we go, yeah, I know, here it comes. And we get this, immediately someone says, I've got this piece of something or other that will change your life. No, it won't, because I don't do any of this. You know, if you actually looked at my LinkedIn profile, you would see that I would be the wrong person. And that's what I mean by being spammy or weird. I mean, weird, I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah. But
you know, spammy is we kind of know what spammy is.
Because
we have a
yeah, exactly. And I think what's really important there is before you make that content is you do a bit of research, because like you say, there is so much opportunity. You can find out about someone, and not in a weird way, in a very authentic way, and a genuine way, so you can make connection at a level where they've realised, actually, do you know what, you've taken a bit of time out to find out who I am, what I'm about, and make connection accordingly. Is a lot of your work around ZMOT, you know, Google's sort of zero moment of truth, and understanding how to create those moments? Do you draw upon that research a lot?
So in my book, we draw upon that. We do that. We use that research. So just for people to know, so Google did some research in November 2014, where they looked at the type of people that were buying on Google, and they came up with a view that, well, the conclusion of their report was that UK PLC boards actually don't really know what's going on in the world. They think that social media is for kids, it's for taking pictures of your lunch. There's kind of this Uber thing, but we don't really know. We've kind of read about it in a in-flight magazine, but we're not really sure what the impact is.
Yeah. And
therefore, what they've done is that they've actually delegated decision-making to a bunch of people, which in our book we call changemakers, which are a bunch of people. Now, the age doesn't really matter, but it's the Google research says they're between the age of 28 and 35. Now, the reason for I picked those, and you know, before we get complaints from 27-year-olds, the reason why that they picked that is that those people generally are seen as having an understanding or have a business acumen, and also understand social. Now, what we saw, or maybe we didn't see it, was actually the world changed when text messaging was invented.
Mm-hmm.
What happened when text messaging was invented was actually the world got a lot flatter.
Okay.
So when I was at school, for example, and I needed to get my homework done, if I didn't know the answer to the question, I'd go to my parents, and they probably wouldn't know. I'd then have to get into school early and actually copy it off somebody else. Now, when text messaging was invented, you just text somebody and said, do you know the answer to question 10?
Mm.
And even now, from a society point of view, I understand that teachers are now seen as being mates, and you can text them.
Mm.
Whereas, you know, they were seen as, you know, they had desks on platforms, and you had to stand there and in line when I was at school.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing that's changed. And what you see is it's this whole bunch of people that are happy to go onto social media and ask questions.
Okay.
So I see it a lot now on LinkedIn, where people are saying, you know, I saw one today, I've got a bad debt. Does anybody know anybody that can basically go and get it for me? Or, you know, there's a guy recently who was doing some graduate recruitment, and he puts the password for the system on his LinkedIn. Now, if people have got the gumption to go and check him out and get and look at his LinkedIn profile, they get the password, they get into the system, they pass go, etc., etc.
Right.
So you know, there are you know, I think that people now see social networks as being pretty much, you know, we spend 20 minutes at least a day in Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what's happened is that there has been this change, and there is certainly what we call the change makers in the book generally are on Twitter. I'm digressing a bit, but what you'll find is a particular type of person on Twitter.
So
if you're looking in certain organisations, certain people generally will be on certain social networks.
So I was going to draw on that in terms of how the different social platforms work in terms of social selling, because I think sometimes people get too hook up on the word selling.
Yes.
When they're using social. Oh, I've got to sell, so I've got a product or a service, or this is what it is, please buy me. and they forget the word social at the start, and they don't look at the phrase as a whole, they look at it separately. And then they look at the platforms, right? Twitter, what do I do on Twitter? I've only got 140. Well, I must tell them what I've got, because otherwise I lose the opportunity, and they forget the relationship. So what kind of person do you find is on Twitter? Because that's linked to my next question, which is about, what about all that? Because the internet and the social is not even a teenager yet. If you look at the number of years, it's not even reached puberty. So there's so many C-suite executives, middle managers that are not on social, or at least not using social to either find suppliers or potential problem solvers. So what type of person's on Twitter? And if they're not on Twitter, how do you connect with them?
Well, most people are on some social platform, social network. And I would say generally now on LinkedIn, if you're not on LinkedIn, you're probably not alive. And though, LinkedIn has a problem, which is that most people actually only log on once a month. Whereas with Snapchat, people are basically logging on once a day and probably are in there for 20 minutes a day. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the difference. Obviously, a different demographic to the type of person you generally get. It's a younger person that generally on Snapchat. Mm. There's a particular type of person on Twitter. If you're like me, where you're generally selling in a B2B environment, what you'll generally find is that there tends to be a more geeky, fact-based person on Twitter. We all love 10 things you need to know about John Lewis, or 10 Skype hacks or whatever. And that generally is the type of person that you'll find on Twitter. Obviously there's a B2C element on there as well. I'm not so much in a B2C world, but you will find people like that on Twitter. And I'm I've done some work in public sector, and we're finding a lot more people from public sector in social media. We quite often get, one of the objections I quite often get is, my customers aren't on social media. Mm-hmm. And I don't believe that's the case.
And how do you counteract that?
Usually by finding them on social media.
Well, yeah, okay, they're finding the people. Here they are. Right.
And I think, and often we end up having that debate about, well, Facebook is for family and friends. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, yeah, maybe it was 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. But if I'm, for example, if I'm calling upon your brother-in-law, he's the CEO of an organization. You may not have that connection on LinkedIn, but you will on Facebook. Yeah. So, which is why, if you're just basing your social selling on LinkedIn, which is only 30% of the social graph, you're leaving money on the table, and you're putting your deals at risk, because I could actually know you on Facebook, mm-hmm. and I have a connection with you, and I just say, well, look, why don't we just meet him for a beer? Mm-hmm. Well, why am I even having this sort of like?
Yeah. So that leads me to the next question around sort of language, the kind of language and etiquette you use on the different platforms. So, like you say, although my brother-in-law, who may be a CEO of some company, I've got a relationship on Facebook, not on LinkedIn, is how does that? What kind of language you start using that doesn't seem like, oh, you're just trying to sell me something else? It's just, there's a smoother interaction, if you like, in terms of.
If I was going to if I wanted to get hold of your brother-in-law, I'd go to you and say, look, this is what we can do, and you would make a judgment. You say, Tim, look, I'm not comfortable with this, mm-hmm. and I would expect an honesty. Or you go, okay, give it a go. I'm sure I'll have a coffee with you or something like that. Mm-hmm. And so, and we're always in life. There's nothing wrong with asking.
Yeah.
If you don't ask, you don't get. Mm. And we're all, I don't think that we've changed our language. We're still being polite. You can still say no. Mm-hmm.
No, absolutely. I get that. So what do you think, if people embrace social selling in the way that you're presenting it in the year 2017? I saw a talk by Seth Godin yesterday, a TED talk that he did in 2009. And if you took the date off and you'd play it today, you'd think he's talking about now, what's happening now in the world in terms of how you make connections, how you build a tribe, and how you start creating a community through using the power of social. What would you say is the impact that social can have on the world, social selling, of the world if people embraced it to the degree that you're suggesting over the next 3 or 4, 5, 10 years?
Well, Adam and I have set up our company, Digital Leadership Associates, to change the world. That's what one of the our missions, because we feel that social is the thing now that will, certainly from a B2B enterprise perspective, is the thing that's going to get them the increase in revenue, the competitive advantage, all of those things. Whether it's social selling, employee advocacy, social makes the world go round. I was doing some training in Kuala Lumpur recently, and I said to everybody, so put your hands up of all those that have been in social media before, and everyone put their hand up. I said, okay, so tell me everybody who's been looking at adverts. Nobody put their hand up. So, well, nobody reads adverts. People are in social because they want to be, and it's a great platform for you to connect with people and try and sell them something. But I don't. To answer your question, I don't see the marketplace has changed very much the last 3 years. I still get the same objections as I did 3 years ago. The reason why Matt and I wrote the book was that actually we found that there was very few people that are actually moving social selling forward. A lot of people that are talking about, were talking about social selling, do so either because they dip in and dip out, and usually they go back to talking about selling or their sales. They talk about general sales process, or they seem to come and they go. There's very few people actually in the world right now that are actually taking the social selling debate and driving it forward.
Okay, Tim, they're saying you're a little bit quiet. Can you just put your mic closer to your mouth just as you're talking? That'd be great.
Sure.
Yeah, great. So you mentioned B2B quite a lot. There's a lot of people maybe watching this broadcast that their market is B2C, whether they're selling coaching services, products, whatever type. Is the psychology different there?
I don't think it is so much. Most of my experience is in B2B, but in the B2C organizations we are talking to, ultimately what you're trying to do is probably drive for a meeting. So if you're selling something and it needs if you're trying to have a meeting, whether that's a Skype meeting or a face-to-face meeting, it's slightly different if you're selling a mobile phone and so on. But it may be that to buy a mobile phone, you've actually got to drive a person to the shop.
Mm-hmm.
So we're doing some work with a fashion company, and ultimately what they want to do is, it's a very high-class fashion company. What they want to do is actually start a conversation on Instagram from getting people to actually go, when I'm 30, I'm going to want to buy those clothes, and it's a bit like going to the McLaren garage and putting your nose up against the window and going, and right down to, okay, how can we actually funnel those people down? Because the moment we get them in the shop, we're able to actually, the salesperson in the shop or the salesperson for the IT company should be at the point of actually being able to make that sale or that transaction.
I see.
So there's two things. One of the two things that we taught the salespeople in terms of the transformation was, one, how to drive for how to get the meeting, and then how to transact that meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And those can be different. They can be different individuals,
yeah,
with different responsibilities.
Yeah.
But if I can get a person into TK Maxx, the person on the floor should be able to make a sale.
Yeah, it's also understanding where social is in the process. What role it plays, as opposed to saying, social selling, I've got to go online completely and sell. It's not. It's part of the process of the engagement. A lot of people ask me, is social a marketing tool? I say no, it's an engagement tool. And once you engage, where that takes you, could be anywhere.
Yeah, and it's not social selling or bust. There's nothing wrong with. I still advocate. If you're in a market where cold calling is working, then carry on using it. If you're in a market where email is working, then carry on using it. Personally, I had someone cold call me yesterday. If I don't know the number in the phone, I don't pick it up.
Yeah.
Because usually cold calling is turned into some element of manipulation. where they have a spreadsheet that it kind of like goes down to the bottom right-hand corner where it's a yes.
Yeah.
And the only way that you can get out of that is to basically use two words. One of them is off.
Absolutely, and I can guess the other one, yeah.
And you know, and so, you know, I had a guy cold call me from Yale or something like that, and he left me a voicemail saying, "Look, I'm not just going to keep leaving you voicemails." And I thought, well, I'm not bothered because you're not adding any value. Because whenever I talk to you, try to sell something.
Yeah.
But what he didn't seem to understand is I'm on every single social media platform there is. If he'd actually just gone to LinkedIn and saw me and go, "Oh, there's Tim Hughes," read one of my blogs, and then came to me and connected me and said, "Really loved your blog this week, Tim, on how to actually write a blog," you know, and then started building up a relationship.
Yeah.
With me. It's a different conversation.
Massively. And so I was going to ask you that, is there any reason to cold call at all with the availability of data to someone's disposal? I had the same situation. I said, "You're ringing me. You've not done any research on me. You could have easily done that, and it'd be a better conversation." So my question to you is does cold calling justified? Is it still justified in the way we used to do it 10, 15 years ago?
So when I was at Oracle, cold calling was still the best lead generator.
Okay.
But we were training the agents to make they were going online and actually doing an investigation. It was B2B, and we didn't have some sort of manipulative spreadsheet that said it was, and we were using certain techniques, and we would when I said that so generally we were getting 5 out of 100. You ring 100 people. You'll probably have 8 to 10 conversations, and 5 people will probably say, "Yeah, okay, I'll have a meeting."
Mm-hmm.
You'll probably and as you go and fine tune that, the other people, you'll probably get a whole bunch of people that will say, "Ring me in 3 to 6 months," and then you need to nurture those, and that's a different conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, you're getting a 5 in 100 response.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
even doing the research before.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But what you're generally doing when you find someone from a telesales point of view is that you're in effect getting people that are saying, "I'm ready to buy."
Mm-hmm.
What you're generally not finding are the people that are saying, "I'm not ready to buy," and they're doing research.
Yeah.
And it's those people that are saying, "Give me a call in 3 to 6 months," that actually are probably the most interesting, because they're going through a process where they're formulating in their mind and doing online research about what it is that they want to buy.
I see.
So that they're coming up with an idea of what the box will look like, and what you should be doing as a salesperson is influencing what that box is like.
I see. I want to ask you one final question before I move on to 10 questions. So we've got a few people who have made some comments there. We're a bit loud, I know. Thank you, Catherine, saying looking good. All good. So if you've got questions or any comments before we finish off this broadcast, just put your question or comments down in the thing. If you're watching this, give us some love, give us some hearts. Let us know that you're here. Tim loves a bit of social validation, and so do I. So one thing I want to ask you, what you find on social as well, Facebook, Twitter, there's a lot of people who are showing you how to get through their click funnel, how to build a list, how to, get people off where they are at the moment to you. What's your view on those tactics and techniques in the context of social selling to get people in your funnel, and then whether you call it spam them or give them value, whatever the phrase is, but what's your view on those techniques?
There's a lot of what are quite often deemed as hacks out there, and a lot of it is rubbish.
Okay.
It's people being manipulative, and sales isn't about that. A person wants to buy something that's going to be useful to them. They don't want to be conned into something. And there's a lot of tools out there also that say we can generate leads. I mean, someone said to me, "Oh yeah, I can generate you 100 leads," and what he was talking about was followers.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's no connection between the number of followers you have and the number of leads you have. I mean, it's a spurious term that they use in terms of saying, "Well, I can get you loads of followers." And as we know, that actually, for example, when Paul and I wrote the article about 10 C-level meetings a week, he had 450 followers. The number of followers you have isn't impact on how good you are on or how you look online.
Mm-hmm.
So I must admit I don't see myself particularly sophisticated online. So when I run courses, I seem I'm able to share a lot of my skills of what I do every day.
Mm-hmm.
But there are a lot of tools out there which kind of.
Yeah, there's, in the work that I do around coaching and training, inevitably I sort of touch upon the psychology of social and how you use social. And I say to people, it's not, if you use it from a point of view, it's like a cocktail party. How would you approach a cocktail party? It's conversation, you lily pad between things, and you don't know what's going to turn up. But also, is you might go to a cocktail party thinking, there is someone there I'd like to be introduced. You don't go there with a billboard or your business card. You go there saying, oh, it'd be great sometime in the evening, just introduction. But you don't pitch them that. You might just intro, which arrange a meeting later on.
Yeah. I mean, you'd never stand there and go, hey, I'm Tim Hughes and you get 30% off. Everyone would just like look at their shoes and think you're weird. You go up, you walk in, you go and get a drink, you look at the which people look interesting, you go over there, and the first thing you do, you don't just barge in and say whatever. You start listening to what they're saying.
Absolutely,
and then gradually, you may interject and then have a conversation. The thing about what social can do around a cocktail party is that it can actually, you can find out from social the 10 people that you need to talk to. So if you go to a cocktail party and there's 100 people, I'm always the person, and I'm standing there going thinking, no, I'm not really. I need to go find something else. and then you spend all night. And I came away from that and actually never found the person that I needed to talk to. But with social, if you actually have done the background and you know the people, you can go, right, I need to talk to Janice. And where's Janice? Right,
Yeah. Yeah. And because you've got a little bit of background, you can. It's a warmer introduction. It's a warmer conversation because you've got some history behind that. That's great. It's been fascinating to talk to you, Tim. I know if you show us your book again. Yeah. So, for people who've come in late, this is Tim's book. Fantastic. Available on Amazon.
Amazon platforms. Last time I looked, Amazon.co.uk had 21 5-star.
There you go. It's 24 actually.
Oh, okay.
I did my research before we spoke. Okay, it's 24. Fantastic, great.
And by the way, somebody gave me like 1, and it said that the only reason why I got all those ones is because I gave the book 1. I didn't. They're wrong.
They're always wrong. Great, fantastic. But we're not finished yet. I have got, the whole point about impact for me is the difference makes. Well, who's the person behind the person? So I've got 10 questions I'm going to ask you, and you can give one-word answers, or you can give a sentence or whatever. But not verbatim. Just see where we are. No passing allowed. This is not mastermind. You will be permanently penalised. So, the Impact Club 10 questions. Tim, who is your hero?
John Lennon.
Why? Just your.
I always have been a Beatles fan. It's a long story, but I'm a vinyl collector. Have been for years. John always seemed to talk to me in some way. I don't know what it was.
Great. Yeah. Tim, what book do you think entrepreneurs need to read? Mine. Social Selling? Absolutely.
I know I'm pitching the book, but I've had a number of people that have come to me and said it's changed their life.
Fantastic.
And I've had a number of people that have read it multiple times. And when I was sitting there, and you may talk about legacy in a bit, but when I was sitting writing it, I didn't ever think that I just decided to write a book.
Mm-hmm.
And a number of people have come to me and said, I read it once. I've then been through with a highlighter, and I've read it 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
And they sit there and they say, I use this every day of my life.
There you go. What?
And so that for me is I just never thought I would do that.
So your book has changed other people's lives. What book changed your life? Yeah, Seth Godin. Yeah.
Probably I bought it when it first came out, which was what?
Or 20, yeah.
10 or 20, yeah. And I was in sales, and I thought I needed to know something about marketing. And to me, it really spoke to me. And I still think it's a book that I would recommend people to read. I think it's more relevant now.
100%.
Yeah, because we all want to be spoken to like we're people.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to be a persona or something like that. If you're going to market to me, you can find a whole load of information about me online. Review that. And if you think that you've got something that will help me, then I'm happy to have a conversation.
Absolutely. And like I said, I watched Seth Godin's TED Talk last night, Building Tribes. And I said, if you take the day off, 2009, and just played it today, you'd think he was doing a talk today. It's so relevant. So next question, whose work do you admire?
From a social selling perspective, I admire people like Jack Kowinski. There's a guy in Australia called Tony Hughes. He's no relation to me. And there's a number of people. Graham Hawkins coming through in Australia. He's written a really interesting book about the way things have changed from a SaaS and a cloud perspective. These people are driving the narrative forward around social selling, and I respect anybody that does.
Okay, good. What is the one thing that will change the way people live their lives?
I think you said earlier on that that social is only just growing up, and I think that there's going to be I still believe that from a cultural perspective we're going to spend more time in social, and there's people we have a joint connection in Thomas Power. He's somebody who is a great thought leader in driving the way that social can actually change the way that we interact between people. And the thing about Thomas is he's not scared to actually experiment.
No, he's not. He's not.
And some things he does, he goes down the blind alley. Other things he does is and that's kind of that's kind of the genius in Thomas.
No, absolutely, I agree with that. Tim, if you had a superpower, what would it be?
Yeah, this is a difficult one. I think if it was, I came up with I'd actually like to cook better.
To cook, a superpower to cook.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Is cooking a superpower for you?
Well, I could have gone for world food or
a superpower.
Yeah.
Like seeing through walls or something.
Maybe feeding people is a superpower.
Yeah, absolutely. If you feed the world, absolutely, Mr. Bob Geldof and the rest. Okay, what do you know to be true that others disagree on?
Oh, well, I have to go back to social selling because I happen to know it's true, and there are people out there that are doing this and they're making a lot of money from it.
Good.
Yeah. And they're not they're not telling a lot of people that they're doing it either.
And they're not being manipulative. They're doing it the right way.
They're not being manipulative. They've been doing it the right way. Yeah. I mean, I see now. I would drop the word social because it's now selling business as usual.
Interesting. Next book title.
Yeah. it's not my next book title.
Yeah.
The one after that.
The one after that, absolutely. What was the first experience in your life when you realised you had the power to do something meaningful?
I think it was when the first person came to me and I've had it in training as well, where people come up to me and they shake my hand and tell me that I've changed their life. And I can never get enough of that. Same with the book.
So when was the first experience in your life that you knew actually I can make a difference? It's not just I think I can, but no, I know I can.
It was when I was blogging, and I seemed to be making an impact, which is why I went for the book deal, because I thought that it's really about going up and moving up and moving up and moving up. And I was writing things, and I'm not. I've never seen myself as a great writer. At school, they kind of took me aside and said, "Don't bother writing anything." And here I am. I'm now a best-selling author. And I think it was that. And I know there's a lot of people who change people's lives by drawing. and I never thought I would change people's lives by writing. And I recommend to everybody that they give it a go.
So
I think that we all have a passion and an opinion. Get it out there.
yeah, just on that, just from a practical point of view, really, when you blogged, where did you blog? On your own platform or LinkedIn or all of them?
I started blogging on my own blog. The downside of that is you have to drive people to the blog because it's kind of out there and no one can find you. When I started promoting the book, I moved everything to LinkedIn purely because people don't have to find you, and LinkedIn is a platform where people are hungry for content. And I spent the 12 months building a tribe or community, as we talk about in my book, and then actually using that as a way of promoting the book.
So before you wrote the book, you blogged on LinkedIn and build your tribe.
No, I blogged on a blog. There is a blog somewhere, WordPress blog somewhere.
Right. Okay. Right.
And then I moved to LinkedIn, and I'm probably now moving back to the blog.
I see. Good. What is the single biggest obstacle you had to overcome? You have overcome.
My English and the inability to write it down, and that was a massive. The other one is video as well. I come from a generation where video isn't something that if you had a video camera when I was a child, you were generally a rich person, and the videos now people take on Snapchat and stuff like that, which are like instantaneous. And I've had to teach myself over the last 6 months to get used to video and to use it myself.
So do you Snap and use Instagram? Do you use video?
I do, but not too great.
Okay.
Snapchat can be an horrendous broadcast medium, and paid for by adverts. And if you're a purist of social like me, you don't like adverts, and you don't like 1950s broadcast marketing.
Okay, interesting. What film would you say everyone should watch in their lifetime? You're probably expecting some sort of empowering. Yeah, go on. We're going to say Bambi.
James Bond and Bourne films for me.
Oh, was it?
I actually thought the Days of Thunder car chases.
Oh, okay. So you like the Fast? Do you like the Fast and Furious and all that?
Well, I do, but it's probably I probably prefer something a little bit more. If you could call it James Bond intellectual, a little bit more in it.
I see. Yeah. Just on that, I really thought when you said James Bond, how much do you think the Secret Service use social?
They're all on it. I've got a friend who trains the SIS to use it.
Okay.
They're all on it. I mean, if MI6 and MI5 came to us as people and said, we want you to put and track every single movement that you have, every time that you have a good time, every time you have a bad time, you would have said,
no. We're doing it. We're doing it, and then.
But I've got a friend who's got security clearance, and he said, he's the SAS. But they don't put job titles.
No, I'm sure they don't. Yeah, they no, they don't.
It'll be like boring accountants.
Yeah, they're watching.
Everybody's on social.
Yeah, I better watching it.
And I know people that are using social who sell to public sector who are using social to sell. It's not true that people in public sector are not on social. They are.
We might have to do a completely another broadcast on. So maybe once you've done that blog, we can do a special one on public sector social interactive. We can do that later. So, final question: what do you want your legacy to be, Tim?
So I want to be famous for social selling, and my legacy is I want to be known to the debate forward around social selling, and I've kind of achieved that with the first book. But the fact that I've just said it's the first book, I feel that there needs to be at least another one.
Absolutely.
And I know that there's another one in here.
Oh, so you haven't started writing the second one or planning it?
No, I actually got the book because my deal with Copenhagen
Refusal. Okay.
Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so and I actually went. I got this idea, and they said, yeah. When can you?
Right. So they haven't given you a deadline there for a first draft.
Yeah, I was like, I need to think about it a bit. So
Okay.
I've only just Adam and I are now only 5 months into our startup. So
Yeah.
we've got other things to think about. But yeah, there's another book. Gonna
Fantastic. We'll look forward to it. Well, there'll be a good. So we've got 2 broadcasts coming up. One to talk about the social side of public sector, and then one when we get the second book out. So hopefully within 12 months we'll both of those.
I'd love to come back.
I will welcome back. Absolutely fantastic, Tim. Really enjoyed you coming on to the Impact Club show. Which is all about making an impact to the world. Hopefully this is giving some insights. We're going to have an offline event soon, so you'll be invited to that, and plus all the other impact makers. So thank you very much. I hope everybody's enjoyed the broadcast. We've got a few comments there, which is great. Absolutely. Show me some love. Show me some hearts. And if you're watching a recording of this, please comment and please connect with Tim. Tim's connected on this profile. No, on Twitter, and LinkedIn, whatever. And that's really important to think, because the whole point of impact is it's very easy to think that unless you're really famous or really well known that you can't make an impact. This is about those little. It's about that mosquito in the net. It makes an impact. Doesn't matter how big or small you are. It's the environment you're in, and that's what this is about. Absolutely. Let's talk to Tim. Let's talk to me, and let's just get. And if you want to be on the show, if you're making an impact as well, please be in contact. Thank you, Tim, for your time. Have a great day, and we'll speak soon. Have a good one. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.